Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Touchline Tugao. This is Game Week 3, but before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about Game Week 2. I've been on holiday, so I've not been able to post a video, but I do this sort of thread on Twitter, which is the same in video form, I suppose, but just I do it in text form. So if you do want to see that as well as this, make sure you follow me on Twitter, links in the description and on your screen. But first, let me just do a quick recap of Game Week 2. Game Week 2 kicked off with pure chaos. Casapia's team bus broke down on the way to AVS, forcing them to borrow the home side's bus, and kickoff was delayed. On the pitch, AVS missed an early penalty through Rafael Barbosa, and things only got worse. Osiunda's scrappy finish gave Casapia the lead, and Chamba tapped in the second after a spilled free kick, and AVS offered little, wasting a late one-on-one and fell 2-0. In Gameweek, Vitória and Estrela served up the game of the round. Estrela struck first, but Miguel Nobrega's header levelled before the break. A back and forth second half saw luck playing into Estrela's goals, but Vitória's persistence paid off, netting twice to win 3-2, and Nelson Oliveira rolled back the years with a classic header and tireless work up front. Tondela and Famalicão then played out in a tense battle, the visitors edging it 1-0 thanks to relentless pressure and a single breakthrough. In Amadora, Benfica needed a highly debatable late penalty to scrape past Estrela de Amadora 1-0. Rio Ave looked in control against Nacional, scoring early and gaining a man advantage after a red card, but wastefulness let the visitors back in. Ramirez equalised and Nacional held on for a gutsy 1-1 draw. Braga made light work of Alverca. A 3-0 win wrapped up by half-time through Diego Rodriguez, Ricardo Horta and El Azuni. Alverca improved after the break but lacked some finishing. In the Azores, Santa Clara dominated possession but couldn't score. Moreirense just needed one sharp move, Shetien grabbing the only goal in a 1-0 away win. At the Alvalade 2.0, Sporting demolished Arouca 6-0, with Ricardo Mangas, the new signing, scoring twice from left-back in a statement performance. Arouca's early red card sped up the collapse. Finally, Porto were clinical in Barcelos. Frotol's header and Pepe's strike right after half-time scored a professional 2-0 win over Gil Vicente. So the big picture from Game Week 2, Sporting and Braga flexed their muscles, Porto stayed steady, Benfica stumbled over the line, while AVS and Arouca both looked shaky. So on to Game Week 3, and the first match of the round was Moreirense 2, Vitória 0. And the first game was actually broadcast direct live on TVI, a free cable channel with just a standard TV. So this made it a 4 PM kickoff time, but made it even sweeter with being 33 degrees outside and a pretty full stadium. The first 2 minutes, Vitória had 2 great attacks on goal, making their intent clear from the off. The game was fiery in the opening 12 minutes, with calls for refs to look at VAR on both ends, but both amounting to nothing, whilst Vando Felix was the best creator for either team at the half. But neither team really held that much of an advantage going into half time. But, as has happened in the last few games, Shetien took over, scoring 2 goals in 2 minutes in the second half for Moreirense, and it was a poor second half for Vitória, who seemed to use up all their energy in the first half, but Luis Pinto's men looked poor to start the season. Even with the win against Estoril in Game Week 2, but this performance and the one against Porto might have Vitória, a club who likes to change managers at the tip of a hat, looking elsewhere. My top performers, one for Moreirense, it has to be, for the third game week running no less, is Guilherme Shetien, who is 1 goal away from matching his goal tally last season. In 24-25, 5 goals. In 25-26, 4 goals. And he's only 3 games in. 2 shots, 2 goals, as clinical as you like. For Vitória, it wasn't a great performance from them, but I will go with Thiago Silva, who was a poor night for Vitória all round, but the midfielder was one of the only bright spots. 40 out of 44 accurate passes, 61 touches, 3 out of 5 long balls completed, and whilst only 3 of the 10 attempted crosses were completed, the crosses he did complete were dangerous and just lacked a clinical finisher on the end. The worst performances for me for Moreirense was Cedric Tugao, 16 out of 24 passes, not a single accurate cross in 4 attempts, lost possession 14 times, but to be honest he wasn't really that bad, but probably just the least impressive of Moreirense. For Vitória, I've gone with Gustavo Silva. The forward was horrible this game. 90 minutes, 0 shots, 9 out of 18 accurate passes, which is 50%. Won 2 out of 8 aerial duels, 3 out of 7 ground duels, and lost possession 15 times. Moving on to Nacional versus Sporting, where Sporting beat Nacional 4-1, but it was perhaps a closer game than the scoreline showed, with Sporting being very sloppy during set pieces and crosses throughout the game. None of that was more evident when Nacional opened the scoring, thanks to Morita losing his man and Uri Silva Frango, which just made a mistake, giving Nacional the lead into half-time. But before half-time, two things happened. Morita was subbed off after a poor performance and potentially an injury, putting Sporting's total injury list to 3 with Diamonde, Maxi Arujo and now Morita. Of course you can add that to the players who are already injured in Daniel Bragança and Nuno Santos. And of course Pablo Ruan for Nacional got sent off after a second yellow. But it still wasn't easy for Sporting. They only equalised in the 52nd minute and it took them 20 minutes later to take the lead, after a brace from Pedro Gonçalves. Even though the game might have been done, Nacional will kick themselves for some of the chances missed, including former Sheffield Wednesday striker Lucas João missing an open header from a cross, putting it over the bar. But when Conrad Harder came on in maybe his last game for Sporting and scored the third, the game was done. But to add insult to injury, Pedro Gonçalves completed his hat-trick just after the 90th minute. The best performers for me for Nacional has to be Leo Santos. He scored the opening goal for Nacional off a difficult header, and even after going a man down, the centre-back was still pretty solid. 7 clearances, 2 out of 4 ground duels won, 1 out of 3 aerial duels won, 9 out of 12 passes, and to be honest, if Nacional went down to 10, maybe Leo could have had a shout for man of the match. And for Sporting, of course, it's the hat-trick hero Pedro Gonçalves. He actually looked like he was about to come off with injury in the first half, but he soldiered on and single-handedly won Sporting the game. Even in the first half, he struggled with the end product, but was Sporting's best creator, even hitting the bar at one point. 4 out of 6 accurate crosses, 1 out of 1 accurate long balls, 2 big chances created, 7 shots, 4 on target and 3 goals. 3 out of 4 ground duels won, and even an aerial duel won for the 5'8" forward. For the worst, of course, Nacional is going to have to be Pablo Ruan. It may be harsh, but it's a red card after 37 minutes, although I will say I thought his yellow was a bit harsh, the first one, but even before that, 0 out of 1 crosses and long balls attempted, and lost possession 6 times. Now for Sporting, I'm split between Trincão and Morita, but I'm going to have to give it to the Japanese international. If he was injured, which is fair enough, it definitely showed. It was his man who scored the goal. He lost possession 8 times in 32 minutes and was slow to every ball. Moving on to Benfica 3, Tondela 0, and Benfica cruised past Tondela with a comfortable 3-0 victory at the Estádio da Luz, asserting control from the opening whistle. Ivanovic and Azunes in the first half set the tone, with Prestiani adding a third in the 95th minute. But the hosts dominated possession, repeatedly breaking into the final third and forcing Tondela onto the back foot. Their relentless pressure translated into multiple corners and constant danger from the wide areas. Defensively, Benfica really gave little away, with Tondela struggling to create a single opportunity and consistently lost duels in the air and on the ground to Benfica. Tactically, Benfica's well-drilled high possession approach suffocated Tondela from the first minute, who spent most of the game pinned deep and unable to transition into the attack. With their defensive structure stretched, Tondela's limited attacking output left them exposed to further damage. In the second half, Benfica maintained control and extended their dominance, capitalising on Tondela's fatigue and lack of organisation, and the result was really never in doubt, as the Eagles underlined the superiority with a commanding performance and a 3-0 win. The best players for me has to be Azunes. He's the Swiss army knife of footballers in the League of Portugal, or I guess in his case, a Norwegian army knife, I don't know. He slots in everywhere and he's great in every position. 1 goal and an absolute cracking finish, by the way, 43 out of 50 completed passes, 2 out of 3 long balls and 1 big chance created. He has been Mr. Consistent for Benfica for the last 3 years. For Tondela, I'm actually going to go with the goalkeeper, Bernardo Fontes, and make no mistake about it, he did concede 3, but without him it might have been 8 or 9. He made 7 saves, including some that smacked him right in the face, 39 touches, 20 out of 25 passes, 4 out of 9 long balls, and was very impressive all round. But my worst performance for Benfica, I'm going to give it to Pavlidis. It was a poor night in front of goal for the Greek. 5 shots, 3 on target, 0 goals, an XG of 0.96, 3 big chances missed, 1 out of 4 aerial duels, and lost possession 11 times. For Tondela, this one might be a bit harsh, but for me it's going to be Yarlon. He was never going to get the amount of space that he gets against other opposition against Benfica. But 0 out of 5 crosses, 0 out of 2 long balls, and he lost possession 18 times. And moving on to Arouca 3, Rio Ave 3. An end-to-end thriller at the Stadio Municipal de Arouca ended all square as both sides traded blows in a 6-goal contest. Jose Fontan opened the scoring for Arouca midway through the first half with a great volley and finish, but Rio Ave grew into the game, with Clayton striking twice on either side of the interval and Spikic adding a goal to turn the match in their favour. Arouca did hit back through Alan Treza, who maybe had a lucky header, before late drama saw Duhara rescue a point deep in the 92nd minute. Statistically, Arouca did enjoy more territory and possession, pushing constantly into Rio Ave's defensive third. However, Rio Ave actually carried greater efficiency in front of goal, forcing saves and converting chances with sharp attacking moves. You can argue discipline was a bit of a subplot for both teams, with both teams collecting multiple yellow cards, Arouca in particular walking a fine line, as key players including Fontan risked suspension with aggressive challenges. In the end, Arouca's persistence paid off, salvaging a point in dramatic fashion, while Rio Ave will feel frustrated not to have closed out, which looked like a decisive away victory. The best performances for me, Arouca, is Jose Fontan, a goal from the centre back, 8 clearances, 99 touches of the ball, 74 out of 84 passes, 3 out of 8 long balls, 3 out of 4 ground duels and aerial duels, 1 respectively. A great performance from the Spanish defender. And for Rio Ave, it's Clayton, all aboard of the Clay train, ladies and gentlemen. 3 shots, 2 goals, 29 touches, 17 out of 18 passes and an XG of only 0.65. 4 key passes added to that as well, and the Brazilian gunman looks to continue his great form. And my worst players for Arouca is Ivan Barbero, coming in from a suspended Nandin. He didn't make any impact before being subbed off after 60 minutes. 1 shot all game, off target, only 11 touches, lost all 5 of his aerial duels and 1 of 5 ground duels. He committed 4 fouls and got a yellow before being subbed off. For Rio Ave is Andres Ndoge. A part of Rio Ave's Greek revolution, the defender played 90 minutes, had a major error leading to goal, and didn't even make a single tackle or interception. 1 out of 8 accurate long balls and was a poor performance all round. Moving into arguably the boring game of the week, and that is Famalicão versus Gil Vicente, which ended in 0-0. It was a tight contest in Vila Nova de Famalicão, and it ended goalless, with Gil Vicente enjoying the better of possession and attacking play, with the host struggling to create clear chances. Gil Vicente began on the front foot, dictating tempo and sustaining pressure through long spells in Famalicão's half. The home side briefly found momentum midway through the opening period, but failed to make it count, before Gil Vicente reasserted control with a series of threatening moves late into the first half. But statistically, Gil Vicente did have the upper hand. More shots on target, corners and aerial duel success. While their presence in the penalty area suggested greater attacking intent, it never quite paid off. Famalicão were disciplined and organised defensively, but they did lack the energy in the final third. Neither side found the breakthrough, leaving points to be shared after a game defined by defensive resilience and attacking inefficiency. Both did cite claim for penalties in the last few minutes of the game, but both were not called, and in my opinion, both not called correctly. Although Famalicão's one looked like a penalty in real time, the replay showed that Andrew, the Gil Vicente goalkeeper, did get the ball first. My best performers for Famalicão is going to be Lazar Skerovic again for the second week in a row. 8 saves from the Serbian, prevented 1.08 goals, 47 touches, 24 out of 29 passes, and is proving to be one of Famalicão's best players so far this season. And for Gil Vicente, I've gone again with the goalkeeper. I've gone with Andrew. It was a true battle of the goalkeepers for this one. Whilst Andrew didn't really have much to do in terms of making any save, he did make 3 big ones. Had 60 touches of the ball and only 28 out of 40 accurate passes, but 16 out of 17 long balls. And the worst performance for me for Famalicão is Gil Dias. He was the star of my game week 1, but only 20 touches, 4 out of 8 accurate passes, 4 shots and 3 off target. It was a quiet game for the former Benfica player. And for Gil, I've gone with Santi Garcia. 3 shots, all off target, lost possession 11 times, and really nothing of note. Moving on to the Estadio Dragão, 4-0 for Porto against Casa Pia. And Porto made light work of them, with a dominant 4-0 victory. The hosts were 3 up by half time, thanks to goals from Borja Sainz, William Gomez and Nohan Perez, before Borja Sainz struck again to complete his brace in the second half. And I think it's fair to say Porto controlled every single aspect of the match, possession, territory and chance creation, while Casa Pia failed to register a single meaningful attempt on goal. Porto's relentless pressing and clinical finishing left their opponents chasing shadows throughout. Casa Pia meanwhile were outclassed in every single area, struggling to escape their own half, and they were second best in duels and never found a foothold. Forwards like Cassiano and Osinda were left isolated, unable to actually threaten Porto's back line. In the end, the goal in quality was stark for Farioli's men. Porto were ruthless and efficient, and Casapia were overwhelmed and passive. A statement win for Porto, who looked firmly in rhythm. The best performers for me, FC Porto. Sorry Borja Sainz, it has to go to Alberto Costa. Borja Sainz arguably should have got it, but I'm going a bit hipster and choosing Alberto Costa. The right back got 2 assists. He won 5 out of 9 ground duels and 1 out of 1 aerial duels, and had 39 out of 40 accurate passes. 2 key passes in the game, and overall has been a revelation in this Porto team since joining from Juventus. And for Casapia, and sorry Casapia fans, it's going to be no one here. They were embarrassed at the Dragao, with the back 3 specifically being the issue. But no one really did anything of note for Casapia. I thought the goalkeeper was okay, I suppose, but definitely not good enough to earn player of the game, I suppose, for Casapia, or their best player. But worst performers for me for FC Porto is Gabby Veiga, and this might be a bit harsh putting a player in a team that won 4-0, but Veiga really didn't do that much of note. He lost possession 12 times, didn't win a single ground duel in 3 attempts, and overall just had ugly play. I would argue the weakest midfielder out of Porto's 3. For Casapia, I could have picked any one of the back 3, but for today I'm going for João Goulet. The centre-back had a miserable time, losing possession 14 times from centre-back and was dribbled past twice. He won only 1 of 6 aerial duels, and it was a poor day at the office, but as mentioned before, the back 3 easily could have been put in here, all of them together. Especially Chamba on the 4th goal, with the great assists, unfortunately to a Porto player in Borja Sainz, to finish it off. To the most surprising result of the game week, Braga 2, AVS SAD 2. And at the quarry, the hosts were forced to settle for a draw after a dramatic contest against AVS. Rodrigo Salazar put Braga ahead from the penalty spot midway through the first half. But defensive lapses from Braga, as mentioned before in the previous video I did and even on my Twitter thread, I said they were going to struggle on the counter-attack versus better opposition. Now, I didn't expect it to be AVS, but Rafael Barbosa and Diego Duarte turned the game on its head. Despite dominating possession and creating numerous openings, Braga found themselves chasing. Their persistence eventually paid off in the second half when Braga pulled level through Fran Navarro, very late in the game, but ensuring the points were shared. Braga controlled territory and attacking flow throughout, but wasteful finishing and vulnerabilities at the back cost them. AVS, by contrast, showed clinical efficiency with their limited chances, executing counterattacks with precision. In the end, I do think Braga played very good attacking football, but the dominance in possession was not enough to secure victory. While AVS did earn some respect with a resilient and efficient performance on the road, and was so close for a famous victory. For me, the key players for Sporting Braga has to be João Moutinho. He has continued to age like a fine wine. 124 touches, 93 out of 107 accurate passes, 6 out of 8 accurate long balls, 3 out of 7 ground duels won, and 1 aerial duel out of 1. He also made 4 interceptions, 3 tackles and 1 clearance. For AVS, I'm going to give mine to Rafael Barbosa, a goal and assist in this game after a dreadful performance last week, including missing a penalty. But it was a much better performance and impact and response for the midfielder. 27 touches, 13 out of 18 accurate passes, 1 of 2 accurate crosses, 1 shot on goal, and 1 goal. He's one of the main reasons that AVS rescued a point. For worst, Braga, I've got to go with Lucas Hornacek. The goalkeeper had a terrible time. He only made 1 single save in the game and was largely at fault for, I think, the first goal, and really should have done better. I've come to expect big things from the Czech, so this performance was quite disappointing. For AVS, I've also gone with the goalkeeper, Simão, and another goalkeeping error this time leading directly to the Braga goal. He did make 3 saves, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to secure what could have been a famous win for AVS SAD. And now for the final game of the game week, Estrela 2, Alverca 2, and genuinely one of the funniest games I have ever seen in my entire life. Drama unfolded at the Stadio Jose Gomez as Estrela, Amadora and Alverca shared the spoils in a chaotic 2-2 draw. In a match that had everything. 4 goals, 2 red cards, and even the referee being forced off injured. Alverca struck twice late in the half. Cedric Ignozi, I think I'm pronouncing that right, I don't know, breaking the deadlock before Marko Milanovic doubled the advantage on the stroke at half time. Estrela responded immediately through Fabio Ronaldo with a back heel goal, keeping the contest alive heading into the break. And in the second half, the host pressure eventually paid off when Sidney Lopez Cabral levelled the score with an absolute screamer of a free kick. Both teams finished with 10 men after one direct red card after a reckless challenge from Estrela and also a second yellow from Alverca. Despite Estrela creating more attacking entries and winning the majority of the aerial and ground duels, their finishing did lack sharpness compared to Alverca's clinical edge in the first half. To add to the chaos, the match only saw 35.49% effective playing time, one of the lowest figures of the season. In the end, neither side could find a decisive breakthrough, with the match remembered as much for its disruptions as the football that was played. For me, it's Estrela and has to be Sidney Lopez Cabral, for the free kick goal alone really, but he played 90 minutes, 1 goal from the free kick of an XG of just 0.06, 52 touches, 11 out of 12 passes, 3 key passes, 3 out of 4 long balls, and was overall just a solid player for Estrela today. For Alverca, I'm going to go with Cedric Nuozi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we'll go with it anyway. He only played 65 minutes, but he did score, and it was a clinical finish. 32 touches, 11 out of 15 passes, 2 tackles and 1 clearance, and a solid defensive contribution. And this one I'm going to cheat a bit, but for the worst players, I've gone with the 2 players who got sent off. Paulo Moreira for Estrela and Kayki Naves for Alverca. Kayki Naves only joining from Palmeiras recently as well, so expected better from him. But Paulo Moreira's was a direct red card, which is probably a bit worse, and was a very reckless challenge. Kayki Naves may be unlucky to get a second yellow, but at the end of the day he should have been a bit more careful. But yeah, both men getting my worst performers for Estrela versus Alverca. So that leads to the question, who is my team of the week? And I think there is a few to choose from, but I am going to go with FC Porto. For me, 4-0 against Casapia. I know Casapia didn't look that great against Sporting either, but Porto made them pay for their lack of defensive contributions. But also, for me, Benfica has to be mentioned as well. They dismantled Tondela too. And I'm not going to put Sporting in that bracket because I was actually quite disappointed with Sporting, especially in the first half of that game. But at the end of the day, I think the 2 best teams for me in this game week has to be for Benfica and Porto. But I also will say, for me, Moreirense is up there too. A 2-0 win against Vitória Guimarães is no easy feat, and they have looked solid this season so far. As for my players of the game week, for the, no particular order, I will go for Alberto Costa with FC Porto. I will go with Pedro Gonçalves, of course, the hat-trick hero for Sporting. I do want to go with Sidney Lopez Cabral just for that free kick, to be honest, so I'm going to put him up there. Maybe that's wrong. And then with Guilherme Setien as well. What an absolute baller he's been so far, man. But yeah, been very good. But as we take a look at the table, you can see Sporting are still top of the table with 9 points. They have scored more goals than FC Porto for now. But the next game week 4, Sporting versus Porto at the Alvalade will be a very interesting game. But going further down the table, Moreirense in 3rd, Braga in 4th, Famalicão in 5th, Benfica in 6th, but they still have a game in hand. Gil Vicente 7th, Arouca 8th, Vitória 9th, Casapia 10th, Rio Ave 11th, Estrela Amadora 12th, Estoril 13th, 14th AVS, 15th Alverca, 16th Nacional, 17th Santa Clara, and 18th Tondela. There are 2 teams that didn't play this game week. That is, of course, being Estoril versus Santa Clara, as Santa Clara has a Conference League qualifying against, I believe, Shamrock Rovers. I could be wrong. It might be a different Irish team. No, I was right. It was Shamrock Rovers. And they're currently, I believe, 2-1 down on aggregate. So they have not been able to play this week to try and get the Portuguese teams qualified and help that the coefficient, should I say, rather. But yeah, that is pretty much it for me. What do you think of the game week 3? Who was your best performers? What was the best team? What was the best game? For me, the best game has to be Estrela versus Alverca. What a crazy game. And literally just sums up Liga Portugal for me. But anyway, I'll be Sam for a second. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed Touchline Tugao, please let me know. Make sure you follow the thread on Twitter as well. Follow me on Twitter as well if you want to keep up to date on, other things that I'm going to be doing. But yeah, other than that, I've been Sam for a second. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, man. Peace.